Housing prices rise while people get pushed out of East Cambridge. The housing market has been down in many places across the country, but East Cambridge and the rest of the city have seen an ever-increasing spike in housing costs. The price one pays to live here doesn't just affect the money in people's pockets, it also changes the community that many locals have grown to love. Noemi Alves Vendetti, a real estate agent at RE/MAX Destiny, grew up in the neighborhood.
East Cambridge, from the time that I was 5 years old, that's when we moved there from Portugal, was definitely completely different from what it is today. I mean, you still have a lot of the, the locals that have been there for 30 plus years. However, I've noticed a change in a lot of young professionals moving there, some grad students, specifically MIT, and people who basically getting relocated and want to be closer to Boston. So the demographics have definitely changed in that way. So it has flushed out a lot of people my age who could no longer afford to live in Cambridge, where they ended up moving to, say, Chelsea, Everett, Malden, Medford. So it has driven out a lot of people who grew up in East Cambridge. It's just a completely different monster now than what it was when I was growing up.
Mark McGovern was recently elected to Cambridge City Council and is a proud fifth-generation Cantabriggian.
You know, we used to be a city where middle-income people, firefighters, police officers, teachers, could afford to live and raise a family and buy a house and, set down roots. But we're really not that community anymore for a lot of people. Cambridge had rent control for a number of years. And what that did was that kept rents in certain apartments low. And that meant that Somerville, for example, which was at the time less desirable than Cambridge, although, some people would say it's still is. Some people would say it's more desirable than Cambridge at this point. But Somerville their rents would be lower because Cambridge rents were lower. Well, when we lost rent control in '94 and rent prices went through the roof and there was a huge condo conversion rate where the rental stock came down because people converted their triple deckers into 3 condos and sold them for crazy amounts of money. You had a decrease in the rental stock, an increase in the rents. But then Somerville could raise their rents and still be cheaper than Cambridge, but they were still more expensive than what they used to be. And it just kind of rippled out. And that's continued to happen over the last, 15, 20 years.
This housing issue has been going on for almost 2 decades, but recent developments are causing it to continue. Dennis Carlone was also recently elected to Cambridge City Council and is an award-winning architect who has designed many buildings, public spaces, and specifically affordable housing in urban areas. He focused his career and campaign on creating well-planned housing.
But the other problem is, for East Cambridge and the adjacent neighborhoods, is MIT, great institution. I have many friends there, but they have consciously not built all the dormitory needs of their students, graduate students. And you get 3 graduate students together, they can afford to outprice a lower income family for a 3-bedroom unit. Exactly what we want to build more of for families. So that's another force pushing out traditional lower income, even middle income families. Kendall Square has been rezoned, and the amount of housing that's going to get built is very, very tiny. In fact, was forced onto them. And yet it's major new commercial construction.
One may think new construction in the area would help, but that's not necessarily the case.
We're building a lot of 1-bedroom and 2-bedrooms, which again doesn't help a family. It's fine for single folks, but or young married couples. But once you have a child, how am I I'm going to pay $3,000, $3,500 a month for a small 2-bedroom when I can buy a house in Medford, for less than that. We have to look at who qualifies for affordable housing. Right now, if you make 80% of the median income, national median income, you can qualify for affordable housing. But 80% of the median income is fine if you live in Tennessee or Iowa where things are inexpensive. In Cambridge, you still can't live on that. So how do we expand who actually qualifies for affordable housing? So you're building more, and then you expand it so a couple that makes $110,000 a year, which seems like a lot of money, is not a lot of money to live in this city, but yet they don't qualify for anything.
One new development in the heart of East Cambridge is the renovation and redesign of the Edward J. Sullivan Courthouse.
The state had three finalists in terms of which developer they could go with, and they went with the only developer whose plans didn't include housing. That's an incredibly lost opportunity for that neighborhood.
The Massachusetts inclusionary zoning laws call for any new housing development over 10 units to be 10% affordable housing. In Cambridge, it's 15%. Dennis Carlone drew up the original plan for the North Point area of East Cambridge. It's meant to be mixed use with commercial, residential, and retail space.
A lot of it is housing, half housing, half commercial development. And, when you hear that 15% of any new housing is affordable, it's actually 11%. There's a numbers game going on, 11.5%. Some neighborhood groups, and I think they're pretty much right, that we're actually losing affordable housing with new construction, not gaining because of all the units that we talked about before that are lost because wealthier people come in.
Noemi said North Point would be finished in 10 to 15 years. Housing problems in East Cambridge don't only concern renters.
I mean, you can't touch a single-family home in Cambridge for under $1 million, or pretty close to it. Buying something here, is out of touch for most people. I mean, if I didn't live in the house that my great-grandfather bought almost 100 years ago, I would be out of Cambridge. And my wife and I make, combined, we make probably $130,000 a year, but we have 4 kids and we need space, and we wouldn't be able to touch it. Forget buying a house. We wouldn't even really be able to touch rent.
East Cambridge's appeal isn't helping the housing problem.
A lot of people only want to be in that nook because they want to be able to walk everywhere. They want to be able to walk to MIT. They want to be able to walk to Tech Square and Kendall Square. There are supermarkets close by. There are, fish markets, live poultry markets. I mean, you literally do not need a car to live in East Cambridge because you can walk to anything.
Many are looking to the city and developers to fix these issues.
I think it shouldn't be only borne by the residential developers. It should be housing. It should be provided in part by commercial developers, by institutional developers, Harvard, MIT. We're all in this together, and we're all creating the problem. We're all benefiting from the problem. So Cambridge, in particular, is in an unusual position. We are the wealthiest community in Massachusetts. We have $143 million of what's called free cash. We have the lowest tax rate, residential tax rate in the state. So if anybody can, any city can develop a program to house a full range of people, it's the city.
People are concerned about how the city is changing.
The people who've lived there a long time pretty much know each other. It doesn't mean they're all great friends, but they know each other. They've watched each other's families grow. They take care of each other, and a new person coming in doesn't have that background. The thing you hear in existing neighborhoods is many new people don't seem to be as involved. I think it takes time to be involved. Many of the newer people don't have children, so they don't meet other parents. It just takes time. And some people, as you know, the average person moves once every 5 years. So some of the new people are in and out. So there has to be common ground that brings people together. And many of the neighborhoods are having festivals which help. East Cambridge has a barbecue festival, I guess, in October or September. I missed it again. And I've just heard great things about that.
Cities change, and that change doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. the question is how do you? I want Cambridge to be accessible for anybody who wants to live here, and it's not that way now. And so. So it's not about for me. It's not about keeping anybody out or saying, "Oh, we don't want these people living here." I mean, that. How could you say that, right? But it's more about, having some compassion for the people who say, I want to live here. I've lived here a long time. I want my kids to be able to come back and live here, and be not even having that as an option because everything is so ridiculously expensive.